Let's welcome back our co-host, holding over from the first half hour. He is a retired admiral, former president of the Berkeley County Commission. He's got his own institute, Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
And no aliases, just Bill.
No aliases. We also, in the subterfuge game, have welcomed in our own spy amongst the masses. He is a member of the House of Delegates. He prints stuff, and he takes care of people. Mr. Michael Haidt.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Sure it is.
In the flesh, in person.
I'm sure it is. Also going around the room, the longest tenured member of our group, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning, everybody.
Former tax commissioner of the state of West Virginia, rabid Cardinals fan, and following the baseball Mountaineers as well.
Yes, go Mountaineers.
Been a good run.
Yeah.
Great, actually a historically great run for them.
Yeah.
I'm underselling it here.
Played today at 2, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Via telephone, making his video debut, 26-year member of the House of Delegates, former Deputy Revenue Secretary of the state of West Virginia, Vietnam War veteran, Mr. John Doyle.
Yes, now I'm on the screen,
but I'm not behind the green door. No, sir.
You do sound a little muffled, though. Yeah, so anyway, welcome, John. And making his...
How about now? Let me see if I can put this closer. They told me put it on speakerphone.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds a little bit better, yeah. Making his...
I repeat, I am not behind the green door.
Thank you, sir. Making his debut on the Friday Five and lowering our age average on the show by a good 20 years, Mr. Dylan Bishop.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Rob.
Good
Morning,
to see
guys.
you.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what the math is on that exactly for what the average age is now. But
You are 28, correct?
yes.
Yeah, so we did a opening segment last week where Joe Ferretti asked the panel, what would you say to this year's graduating class if you had a chance to address them, be they high school or college graduates or whatever. And there was some criticism of the group for not having a more of a youthful opinion available. As the youngest member of the group would be me, I guess, last week at 63. So when Mr. Ferretti this week said, hey, Rob, I can't make it Friday, Dylan had contacted me and said, if you have an opening, I'd love to contribute. So, Dylan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well,
I'll try to fill the shoes of Joe Ferretti.
It's good
Do my
to know.
best. I don't know nearly as much about law, but who does?
Make it up. This is National Peruvian Hairless Dog Day. That's for those of you who get your dog waxed. It's also World Day Against Child Labor. For those of you who owned a coal mine in the 1800s, maybe that's offensive, I don't know. It's Raggedy Ann and Andy Day. It's a 111-year anniversary for Ann, 106 for Andy. If you remember Raggedy Ann and Andy from your youth. International Clothesline Week, if you'd like to air out your clean laundry. It's National Headache Awareness Week, which needs no publicity, I think. It's Love Your Burial Ground Week, and you might as well because you're going to be attached to it for a very long time. And it's National Pet Wedding Week. If you're aware of this week, I'm sorry for you. That's all I can tell you.
Who makes these things
You
up?
ever do a pet wedding?
No.
What do you get a dog for a pet wedding?
Milkbone. I don't know.
What states recognize a pet wedding, a pet marriage?
Pet marriage is, I think it's legal in all 50.
Sure.
Our leadoff hitter in that seat is Dylan Bishop. Dylan, the issue is yours.
Yeah, good morning. On Tuesday, they held the primary for Maine. They held their primary elections, and in the election for U.S. Senate, Graham Plattner won over Janet Mills, former governor, or it's actually current governor of Maine for several terms. In a landslide victory, Plattner was actually the first candidate in history of Maine to reach 150,000 primary votes in an election. And this is despite the fact that Plattner, especially in the lead up to the election, in the week or two leading up to it, had a number of scandals to his name. Earlier in the election cycle, there had been the outing of his tattoo, a Totenkopf tattoo, which was a Nazi symbol. His story behind this was that as an infantry member in the Army, he served 4 tours in the infantry, that him and his Army buddies got drunk and got matching tattoos in Croatia, and they just picked a skull and crossbones off the wall. And it came out that he had this, it was a Nazi symbol, and he said, I didn't know that's what it was. and I got it covered up. I got a new tattoo. And then in the last couple weeks up to the election, things were revealed about his infidelity to his wife that he's still with. He says that they worked through their problems as a result of this, and that their bond is stronger now because of it. And then about a week before the election, it was dropped that I believe the headline in the New York Times said that he had a toxic and unsettling behavior as a boyfriend with multiple different girlfriends, one of which I believe works in kind of like worked for the Heritage Foundation, among other things, which people have pointed out. I don't know what you want to take from that. But point being, he had all of these scandals and yet still won very handily over the current governor of Maine. And my question for the group is, what does that say? What do we take away from this? The fact that despite all these scandals, Plattner, who ran on a progressive campaign, was endorsed by Bernie Sanders, among the others, ran away with the primary election and is favored to unseat Susan Collins in November.
Very good. Technical piece of information, Mr. Doyle, I am told by Mr. Hornby you need to turn off the sound on your computer, otherwise it echoes when you speak. So maybe attend to that while we go around the room and start with Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, I think things changed with the 2015 presidential election. I think that the standards we hold people to has been questioned and diminished. Everything's twisted around now. It's control of the Senate, control of the House that is paramount importance. It's not the character of the individual. So I think this is what we're seeing in the main election, regardless of who the individual, regardless of who the candidate was, the most important thing was getting a candidate they felt that could defeat Susan Collins, and so they could Democrats could take control of the Senate. I hate to see this trend, but I think we're seeing it more and more and more, and I do trace it back to what we saw in the 2015 election.
Mr. Carl.
Well, as I've said before, I can fully agree with what I just heard from Admiral Stubblefield. But as a Republican, I'm pleased with the outcome because I think it largely, I won't say assures, but it helps the reelection of the current senator and retention of the Republican control of the Senate.
I had heard he was up by 6 points in a poll, though.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
Mike is making a very good point, and that's why this election is going to be so interesting, because we have exactly the same corollary in Texas. We have a Republican candidate that is highly flawed, and we have in Maine a Democratic highly flawed, and let's see how these play out. It's going to be a very interesting general election.
Mr. Height?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the Admiral as well. I think he has a good assessment. The only thing I'm going to disagree is the 2015 period. I think you can go back to the Clinton years and see where people just didn't care about character and behavior as much as they did about power and control for a certain party. And I think that's what this is about. That if you look at Plattner in this race, he could be the poster child for toxic masculinity. Everything that the Democratic Party says is bad about men, this guy represents that. And to them, during this election, they just didn't care. You're exactly right. This is about holding on to Senate seats and holding on to power in Congress. This has nothing to do with him at all. And I don't think at this point it would matter what came out, what scandal would come out. Those people are going to back him.
I agree.
Mr. Doyle.
Yes, and incidentally, I have had the sound on my computer turned down to zero. So if there's a problem, that wasn't it.
Yeah, I don't hear any echo right now, so go right ahead, sir.
Okay. I agree with Mike Height. It is, and I think it began in 2016. It may not have been caused by the 2016 election, but I think we saw when Donald Trump, all that information came out with his behavior, and the public said, we don't care. I really think that's all gone, and I'm sad about that. Because to me, if you run for office, it isn't just policy that should be considered. It is also the conduct of people who hold the office that should be considered. And I hope we'll get back to that someday. But at the moment, and by the way, I do not think, I'm speaking as a Democrat now, I do not think we're going to win Maine, and I don't think we're going to win Texas, but I still think we're going to get 51 seats in the Senate. Bill and I talked about this off mic last week. And by the way, Dylan, Graham Packer was in the Marine Corps, not the Army.
There you go.
You're absolutely accurate.
Back to you, Dylan.
All right, thank you for that, John. But the way I look at it is, I think this is just, and I agree with a lot of things that the other four of you have said here, that you can kind of draw some parallels to Trump's election in 2015, 2016, of just the fact that the electorate didn't care that there was these issues with personality. It was flatly a rejection of the establishment, honestly. Plattner supports things like Medicare for All, is against a lot of, or you could even say flatly against, Israel's actions in Gaza or otherwise, and that's very popular in the Democratic Party as of right now. There was a poll from Data for Progress that tried to get the numbers of support for Medicare for All, and for Democrats it was plus 64 now that Democratic voters support Medicare for All. When given the arguments for each side, that support only dropped to plus 57. And even in the same poll, just flatly when asked, Republicans were plus 6 in support of Medicare for All, independents at plus 52. When told that this would eliminate most private insurance and raise taxes, independent support dropped to only plus 40, and Republican support was plus 1, so essentially even. And I think that these sort of policies, whether it's Medicare for All or foreign policy, being against foreign intervention, if you want to take the charitable look analysis of Plattner, you could say that he served in the military, didn't get anything out of it, or to say I served in these wars that didn't benefit the people of Maine or the people of U.S., and now I've totally changed how I feel about what we need to do to better society. And those are the things that he's running on, and these things are very popular now because of the amount of people that are living paycheck to paycheck, don't have health care, are tired of foreign intervention. So I think these sort of issues are what lead to the voters of Maine, when they were asked in a lot of exit polls, they were just like, well, this is the kind of person we need in terms of the issues, things like this. But I think that it's overall a rejection of establishment politics.
And Bill, before you go, I heard several exit interviews, and the common thing among those was some of the things Dylan was saying, but it was also, we just don't want Trump in charge anymore. And by giving and we don't, we're going to have to accept flaws for the people that we run, because nobody's perfect. But no matter who we put in there, if they can help make it a Democratic majority in the Senate and the House, at least it curtails Trump's power, and he's far worse than anything that we have to tolerate in terms of flaws with our candidate. That was the common theme of the exit interviews that I heard with people who voted for the Democratic candidate. Go ahead, Bill.
And I think that's what we were saying earlier
Yeah.
in response to it. Dylan, I applaud your question and I applaud your assessment. I'm going to quibble on just one small characterization.
Sure.
You said that people were voting on, I think you used the word personality. They were voting on personality. I don't think personality came into play. We're talking about the Trump election now. I think the character was the one that was at issue. Trump,
That's a better word to use for
Trump has a unbelievably large personality, and that has played well to him. It's been to his advantage throughout. It's his character aspect that people question.
I do think when the election came around that it became more of a let's make sure we get the Democrat over the Republican. I think as Plattner started his campaign, it was more about the issues that kind of railed against the establishment. And I think those sort of things, his policy stances, are what got Chuck Schumer to recruit Janet Mills into the primary to try to challenge him. And I think it was just a total misstep on the part of Schumer to try to have his analysis be that this almost 80-year-old politician who is a part of the establishment, if you want to call it that, would have a chance against somebody who is more in the vein of working class and these issues that are more the Democratic Party base has kind of migrated towards wanting more extreme measures, seeing stuff like the Affordable Care Act maybe as a half measure, wanting something like Medicare for all, or just the fact that is Bernie Sanders a bit of a kingmaker at this point? A lot of his endorsed candidates are doing well in their elections.
Well, so is Trump, and so you have to ask the same question. As far as Mills, she was never a viable candidate. She made a mistake of trying to have it both ways by putting her campaign on hold, but not withdrawing altogether. So that was not a real option.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been very anti-Susan Collins campaign in general. Another example of this is a part of the establishment, someone that votes for war. She sent me to war if you're Plattner, basically. So I think you can take whatever stance you would like to take when it comes to, what can you stand when it comes to a politician and their personal life.
I think it goes back to the power dynamic as well. No matter how flawed my candidate is, it's better than your side having power. So it doesn't matter. And it's Republicans are the same way. So, whatever we have to do to stay in power, whatever candidate we have to elect to have that power is what we'll do. And it doesn't matter what their character flaws are or their scandals.
Yeah, and I agree with Mike 100%. Susan Collins, if you removed her from the dynamics of the power structure, she is a good person. She's been a good senator. She's been moderate, which I think is what we need now. She has been a high character. The only thing now is this power struggle for the control of the Senate. That's the only driver. And her character, the good things she's done, is pushed to the side.
Just moderates have a hard time getting elected anymore.
Moderates do, yes.
They have a hard time getting past primaries.
Yeah.
And John Doyle, by the way, we haven't gone to you in a while because your echo is still a serious issue, so we're keeping your volume down until that gets rectified. We're going to reestablish connection with John at 9 o'clock and go through that process. With him, there's a lot of stuff that we can catch up with John after 9 o'clock. So, John, just kind of chill out. We'll get back to you after 9. Any other comments for Dylan on this particular subject?
John chilling out?
Yes, as best as he can.
I think they made good points about the power dynamic, and this is about control of Democrat versus Republican. I think the Democratic Party is kind of really only for the first time transitioning to embracing candidates that are more progressive. Because I think for probably the majority of the last 10 years, someone like Bernie Sanders or somebody who was maybe would have been endorsed by him might have been a candidate that had a better shot in a race against a Republican, as kind of the voting, the electorate of America became a little more polarized. I think you could have had situations where more of the Bernie-style candidate would have won an election, but the Democrats didn't want to go down that road.
I think you're reading way too much in the Maine election. I disagree with what you just said. I don't think that was the case. I think if they're doing anything, they're moving toward more the moderate away from the progressive.
Go ahead, Mike.
Maine is geographically very large, but what is its population?
For the Senate, it makes no difference.
Is it bigger than West Virginia?
No, it's about the same, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, maybe the better way to put it, Bill, with what you just said you disagree with, would say that more of those candidates are winning elections in spite of whether or not the Democrats want to back them at first.
Yeah, that's this product
and that's
of our primary system, which is going to drive more to the extremes, both the right and the left.
1.4 million is Maine's population.
So smaller than
so smaller than West Virginia.
Smaller.
A little bit, yeah. Let's look at this from a generational age, though. So, Dylan, 28 years old, Bernie Sanders, appealing to you or not?
I wrote in Bernie Sanders for president in 2016 in my first election when I was 18 years old. I didn't want to vote for Trump. I didn't want to vote for Clinton. The only person that interested me was the one that saw that there was an accumulation of wealth going up to the top, and the establishment of both parties didn't really have good enough answers to solve these things of why there's so many people without jobs, without having to live paycheck to paycheck if they do have a job, needing a second job. I just think that the Clintons and the Bidens of the world didn't have good enough answers. I think both parties were kind of and still are tied up in too much corporate money to go down that road, and they needed new blood in the system.
What doesn't my generation understand about your generation, Don? We did this last week, and it was overwhelmingly those young people don't want to show up for work, right? That was a lot of the feedback that ended up having that took place as a result of Joe's question of what advice would you give to young people who are graduating. What don't we understand? What don't we get?
Multiple of my closest friends right now have college degrees. One has an MBA, and the one with an MBA just had to resort to working at Walmart. He was a park ranger with the National Park Service, and with the new administration, a lot of jobs were cut in the Park Service in general. So there's a lot of young people that, even with college degrees, I saw pretty recently that college degree unemployment was near or at an all-time high. And I just think that the economic situation that a lot of my generation is coming up in when it comes to we're hitting the age to enter the workforce, the conditions are just not the same that they were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And when it comes to technology, when it comes to economic environment, culturally, it's just a lot different. And I think a lot of times we can kind of be thinking in the same mold that we have been thinking. Not to say we need to think outside the box. Maybe that's an oversimplified way to put it. But I just think that my generation and younger is growing up in a vastly different situation than someone who is my dad's age, let's say, and was, maybe 18 years old in the Reagan era. And I think it was just a different sort of situation.
And I'm going to blame my generation for that. That I believe my generation really pushed a college education over and above everything. And now you have all these college-educated kids your age and maybe even older that are having trouble finding work, where we should have been pushing the trades just as much. Because if you look at the trades, they're wanting people. There is a lack of personnel with trade experience and with the skills of trades. So those jobs are plentiful right now if you have that education, and they pay just as much as many of the college educated jobs. So I'll blame that a little bit on our generation, because we pushed it so far that was you have to get a college education to be successful, which we're finding out now was a mistake.
We pushed everybody into a college education, and then we guaranteed their loans. So what did the colleges do?
They upped the amount of
they raised tuition by 4, 5, 6 times the rate of inflation. It was free money,
and they made sure you got to pay it back.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. And then what ended up happening? A bunch of 20-somethings and 30-somethings wound up with 6-figure student loans.
Yep.
And the price of houses went up. The average house in the United States now is just under $500,000.
Wow.
Right? Good luck. Hey, quit whining. Get out there and work. Yeah.
Go back to trade school.
Let's welcome back our co-host. He is a retired admiral, former president of the Berkeley County Commission's got his own institute, Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning, Rob.
Member of the House of Delegates. Several identities. We'll go by Mike Height today.
Yep. Good morning.
Longest tenured member of our crew, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Former tax commissioner of the great state of West Virginia. He is the sports director at this fine establishment. Soon to be a full-time teacher, Mr. Dylan Bishop.
Morning.
And we are hoping, without echo, a 26-year member of the House of Delegates, Vietnam War veteran, Mr. John Doyle.
Good morning. I'm doing this on the landline now. Can you hear the echo?
I've never heard the echo to begin with, so.
Okay.
We'll find out soon enough from our Facebook community.
One point about what we were talking about before. I disagree with Dylan Bishop on one count, and that is in most of the Republican primaries so far, or in a big majority of them, the candidate perceived as more centrist has been victorious over the candidate that has been perceived as more left. Now, we have to accept that in many cases these perceptions are, that they're just that, perceptions. But I think in the Republican primaries, it has been more often than not the more farther right person that has won. So I just wanted to throw that out. This is what I see happening, but I could be wrong.
John, just we're going to give up on the video connection because in our Facebook section they say that you still have an echo. So just abandon the video, Colton, and John, just call in. We'll put a photo of you up there, okay?
Okay. Hang.
Right. So we'll join John Doyle again, just with a video call extinguished. Mr. Stubblefield, issue number 2 is yours.
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to take advantage of the fact we have someone, a teacher and also a delegate around the table today. I'm going to public education. Eastern Panhandle, as well known, has seen a drain of teachers, qualified teachers, going to neighboring states. The southern part of the state has been seeing a lot of school closures. Of our students that between K and 12, 95% attend one of the 702 public schools in West Virginia. But yet the most recent numbers we have suggest that our education system is failing our students. We rank 48th in math, the students do, 49th in reading, 48th in median SAT scores, but 47th in bullying. But we have the lowest dropout rate in the country. Spending per student, which we've often heard as we're one of the highest, we are high, but we're only about 32nd in the country, with about $44,000 per student, but that's $2,000 less than the neighboring states and $2,000 less than the national average. Since 2009, enrollment has dropped by 15%, but funding has decreased by more than 17%. Special needs paints even more of a dismal picture. During the past 5 years, students enrolled in special education has risen 18% of total student enrollment to more than 21% of compared to the regular classroom. 1 in 5 of West Virginia students are now enrolled in special education. In 2005, West Virginia spent $560 million, or nearly 1/4 of the state public education budget on special education, of which $360 million was covered by Fed or state, leaving $180 million shortfall to be covered by the local school districts. Last year, Berkeley County showed a shortfall around $35 million. West Virginia ranks 5th in special education enrollment, but yet near the bottom in funding. We hear every year the legislators are going to take this up, but nothing comes out. We hear that the school aid formula is going to be addressed, Chapter 18 is going to be addressed. We hear that, but coming out, there's nothing. Last year, there was only one special education bill that got out of the legislators, and that was what was not signed by the governor. I have a sense this is a little bit like the 2 games we played as kids. One was kick the can down the road, and the other one was dodgeball. The other guy has responsibility, but the result is our school system, which we've been talking about for years, has not gotten any better. And I unfortunately do not see the trend of it getting any. It may be getting worse, but that's no reflection of the highly dedicated teachers and administrative staff that we have, which I think are top of the line. I think we're failing them, but I don't think it's at the local school district. I think it's toward Charleston.
Oh, we've got a teacher and a delegate and a former delegate in on the conversation. A future teacher is currently a full-time sub, basically. Dylan Bishop, you go first.
Well, I think when you want something to work, you need to put money into it. I think that's the simplest explanation. What happens with a business when you want to inject a business with ways to make it better, improve, and scale up, you fund it. You put extra funding into it. And I know West Virginia is in a tougher situation where there's only so much money to go around. The tax base is not the same that it's going to be in many other states. So, and there's things to balance, and there's a million different things that someone like Mike Height being a delegate has to juggle down there, and I have to make sure I get this person, try to get on board with this, and there's just a million things you got to worry about when it comes to funding. But the education system needs, like, teachers need better pay. There needs to be better resources put into the schools in order for the education to be better. I do think there are instances, of course, where administration choices, who is in the administration, can be improved for sure. And, you know, there's a lot of people that feel that way, and they took it out on the Board of Education this year. Regardless of if that's the right thing to do, I think for a lot of people they would say that it probably wasn't, but the voters who voted in the election thought that it would. So I think in general there's just sometimes the priorities. We talk a lot about education, making sure that's a priority no matter what the party is, but I think that sometimes we get too caught up in whether it's a tax break or funding into other endeavors. It happens more at the national level, I would say, where the priorities are further off. I think in West Virginia we know that education isn't where we need it to be, and that the Panhandle is in a different, even tougher spot where we want teachers, but we need them to not leave for Maryland or Virginia or wherever else. I think the school issue is always going to come back to funding, and any way that we can inject more into it, I think is a good idea.
Delegate Michael Height.
So I will agree that the legislature needs to continue working on things like school aid formula, and we need to continue to work on things like locality pay, and we need to try to push for those. But you also have to look at the fact that in the past 10 years, the legislature has improved a tremendous amount of more funding in the school system. And there's only so much that the legislature can do. We have a system here in West Virginia where education is very centralized, and it's centralized in Charleston. We have a state Department of Education that makes the majority of the decisions. And when we talk about our kids educated, it is the State Department of Education and the Board of Education down there that determines what the curriculum is and what kids are going to be taught and how they're going to be taught. They're the ones making all those decisions without any oversight from the legislature or the people or even local Board of Educations. The Board of Education here in Berkeley County may have a plethora of other ideas and ways to teach to bring up scores, but yet they're not allowed to. They're hamstrung by the centralized bureaucracy that is education in West Virginia. And you look at other states that are successful, and they don't have that. That's not the way they govern education. And I think to be successful in West Virginia, I don't think it's as much about funding as it is about that centralized bureaucracy. Until we get away from that, or until there is some kind of legislative oversight of the Department of Education, I don't think things are going to change.
Mr. Doyle.
It is both funding and over-centralization. The problem is that under the West Virginia Constitution, where local school districts really do have less ability to fund themselves than just about any other state in the union, because in just about everywhere, local school funding comes from the property tax. And since we in West Virginia have the lowest residential real estate property tax as a percentage of value of any state in the union, it is much more difficult for local school districts to use their local money to fund it. They have to depend on the money that comes from Charleston. I do think the legislature needs to, yes, reform the school aid formula, but B, increase the amount of money that goes into the school aid formula, and in doing so can write rules that say that the local school district has more control over the spending of that money. I do think they can do that in statute. The problem is, particularly when it comes to, or the problem with locality pay is, too many of the school teachers in other parts of the state don't understand the situation up here. A few do, and a few say, well, I'm going to move up there and teach for 3 or 4 years, and as soon as I get experienced, I'll go to Virginia and Maryland and make $20,000, $30,000 a year more, however much more it is. And we don't have to get teachers here up to exactly what Loudoun County is paying. We need to get them within striking distance so that it becomes a business decision to not spend the extra time and money on the road going farther to teach. Yeah, and I do think that the school aid formula, yes, needs to be completely revisited, but it can't be done without putting more money into it at the state level, unless you want to increase real estate property taxes, which you cannot do without a referendum because it's in the Constitution. And I don't think the voters would approve of that.
Two interesting comments. Jeff Haddix, a lot of money has been put into it, but it hasn't improved. It's the system that needs fixed, not the funding. And Matt McKinney, if 1 in 5 students require special education, it seems that special education is an incentive to increase funding. Mr. Carl.
Well, surprisingly, I have to say I mostly agree with the first two commentators and their comments about this. But the one thing I want to add is the overly centralized, problem that they both pointed out is largely the result of the dominance of the teachers union in the creation of our system, and that's the villain in the whole thing.
Back to you, Bill.
Yeah, I find it kind of unfortunate that all the discussions eventually evolve back to locality pay, which is an important component, but it's not the central aspect of this. I think it's fixing the system in total is a question. It's been about 4 years since the amendment was defeated by the voters, and yet we still use that amendment, that defeat, as a reason that it's the other guy's fault and we have no control of what's going on. Is it time for another constitutional amendment to try to fix the problem that we see? Just sitting back and doing nothing, I don't think, is the answer.
Issue number 3, Mr. Heights.
All right, I'm going to stick with a state issue. Recently, there was an article that came out talking about West Virginia family support centers, and they're facing funding concerns. However, the budget that we passed this past session had them fully funded. So the funding that was requested from the Human Services, the Executive Administration, they were given everything that they asked for to fund these family support centers. Here in Berkeley County, one of those family support centers is the Children's Home Society, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with them and some of the work they do. But as of right now, Governor Morrissey has not renewed any of their contracts. So there is some concern with all of these family support centers about whether or not they're going to get the money that was in the budget, and whether or not they're going to be able to continue providing these services. Are they going to have to lay people off? And all of this has to be decided before July 1. Normally, these after the session, these contracts are signed. They start, or they're at least promised the funding on July 1, so that they can go forward and plan their year. So we know that some of the TANF monies, and TANF funds are temporary assistance for needy families. We know some of that comes from the federal government, and that's how these are funded. Morrissey, our governor, has said that the reason that he has held up on these this funding is because there is a $40 million structural deficit due to the federal money that's coming in. Used to be COVID money, and now that COVID money is dried up, and there's going to be this deficit. I've heard this structural deficit complaint from the administration before that didn't sort of pan out, because this past year we suddenly had enough money after a $400 million structural deficit to give a 5% reduction in personal income tax. But now, all of a sudden, there's another structural deficit. So I guess my question to the panel is, why would the governor not provide the funding by now if it was available and put into the budget, exactly what he asked for and provided by the legislature?
Mr. Carl.
Well, I have very little background in these programs, but Governor Morrissey, you're right. I mean, if it's whatever the merits are of the program in detail, certainly it ought to, be funded, because you take everything away when you don't support the funding as has been the case. So I just think it's a problem with the governor. I can't support substantively the details of the programs, particularly, but the general process is a problem with the funding problem.
Mr. Doyle.
I agree with Mike Haidt. The legislature has appropriated the money, and the governor didn't veto it. The governor has a line item veto. If the governor didn't want to spend that money, the governor had the opportunity to simply veto that line item in the budget, and the governor did not do that. So the governor is now obligated to spend the money the way the legislature directed. There may very well be a structural deficit there. If so, that is for the governor to work with the legislature to fix the structural defect. I do think part of the problem is this, though. Most states with part-time legislatures give the legislature more authority in terms of controlling the estimates of spending and taxation than West Virginia does. I think the West Virginia legislature, and I've said this for 30 years, the West Virginia legislature needs its own version of the Congressional Budget Office. And the Legislative Auditor's Office could be enhanced by just a little bit and be turned into such an agency. So, therefore, the legislature would be able to say, wait a minute, Governor, we don't have a structural deficit here. Or, yes, Governor, you're right, we have a structural deficit. Let's see if we can fix it. But under the current circumstances, the governor can sit back and say, well, I say green is white, and you can't say anything otherwise.
Mr. Stubblefield.
David Valenti reminded us of a conversation we had with the Star Academy 3 weeks ago, where the governor is diverting $16 million of this the TANF funding to a Star Academy, which is a for-profit education that's supposed to help struggling students. It's interesting that the CEO of the Star Academy donated $42,000 to the governor election campaign. And of the 4 schools that are currently under the Star Academy, all 4 of them say the program doesn't work. So that is part of the problem I see in Mike, that has been diverted from the TANF, which is what the legislators had proposed, to a special interest program of the governor.
Dylan Bishop.
I think Mike is starting in the right place, asking the question why, and I think maybe we just got somewhat of an answer, which maybe reinforces the point that I hope that we do get this figured out, because I think a program like that deserves the funding that was appropriated to it, because and I think sometimes we miss the point of programs like this, where the free enterprise system is going to have pros and cons just like any system would. So, and one of those things is it's not profitable to make sure everybody is housed, fed, or has the means to make sure that they have themselves a sustainable life. So to divert money from that to for-profit education, I don't think the priorities are in the right place there. I just hope that we can figure out and hope that program gets enough funding.
Mr. Haidt, comes back to you.
So for me, most of this is about timing. As a legislator, I'm a little frustrated that we appropriated this money and fully funded these programs, and now there's this delay in funding them from the executive branch. And if there was a $40 million structural deficit, if we knew that COVID money wasn't going to continue coming in, that federal money, why weren't we told back during the session? And why isn't this being addressed now with the legislature? Why isn't this, obviously, if the federal money is drying up, obviously maybe we need to make cuts to these programs in certain areas, but that's for something that needs to be done after this. The funding is already there for this year. So we're not talking about this year. We're talking about that structural deficit in out years. So we have time to fix some of this. Now is not the time to withhold the money. Now is the time to say, all right, we need to start tightening our bootstraps, and we have to make cuts where they're necessary, but not right now. We've already allocated the money. So I'm a little frustrated with the executive branch in the timing of all this.
Another reason for constitutional amendment to address the education system in total.
Well, we tried constitutional amendment. That didn't work.
4 years ago. It doesn't mean it would not work in the future.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think we need to do it, but I think we need to do one constitutional amendment at a time.
I agree with that.
All right, we've reached consensus. It just took enough to thrashing this thing around, and we got an agreement at the end. As we go around the room, welcome back Mr. Michael Heights.
Good morning.
Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning.
The Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning.
Dylan Bishop.
Morning.
And with issue number 4, John Doyle.
Yes. My head has been spinning over the last month or so regarding the war with Iran. It seems like from one day to another it's on again, it's off again. Do we have a ceasefire? Well, yes, maybe no. Is the war going on? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Are there talks? Maybe yes, maybe no. And it leads me to believe or to suspect that President Trump has made a serious mistake in communicating, maybe not intentionally, but allowing it to become obvious that he is desperate for any kind of solution that works for him. And so the question is, has this not perhaps encouraged the IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, to simply say to themselves, we can just bargain as hard as we want, and this guy will eventually give in to us. It's like they believe that they have the cards to turn President Trump's quote from a year and a half ago with President Zelensky around. Maybe they don't on paper. The administration, our administration, claims that they've been basically their nuclear program was obliterated last summer, but now they've, without saying so, have essentially conceded it was not, because they're trying to obliterate it again. So my concern is that if you're going to go into bargaining, I read a book once called Getting to Yes. A very short book, about 90 pages, Roger Fisher and Peter Urey. And basically what they say is that when you go into a negotiation, you have to have what they call your BATNA, B-A-T-N-A, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that is your bottom line. And if the other side won't meet that, you just say, okay, we're walking away, there's not going to be an agreement. Now, in this case, of course, it would apparently mean the continuation of the war, which President Trump knows the American people do not want. So the question really is, has President Trump not boxed himself in by appearing to be too eager to get any kind of agreement? That's the question for the group.
Mr. Carl.
Well, I have to say that I thank Doyle for bringing up a national, international issue after all we've talked about. And I also say that I somewhat agree with the point he's making, is that Trump's PR efforts on this war are not prudent, and that it should not be, use his usual, style of talking all the time about everything to deal with something as serious as this war. So I'd somewhat agree with the point about the Trump's making a mistake in that way. I support the war generally, but the style of the rhetoric is making it a little tougher.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Yeah, I think we're going to answer a lot of questions 25 years down the road when everything's sorted out. But one of the questions that's going to be answered is a comparison between what President Obama and 7 other countries signed in 2015, 2016, and that Trump tore up in 2018, compared to what is going to come out of this agreement right now. A couple of points. The Obama agreement not only said that the Iranians would never have a nuclear bomb. They put in safeguards to ensure they would not have for something like 20 or 15, 20 years down the line. But the guarantee or the promise for Iranians made would have been everlasting. All we're seeing now, the only thing we're hearing now from the Trump saying the Iranians are promising without any related safeguards. The other thing is the amount of money to make this happen. There is much criticism, a lot from Trump toward Obama, of giving a truckload of money to the Iranians. Well, the truckload of money amounted to $1.7 billion. A lot of money, to be sure. However, what is being talked about now is anywhere from 25 to $200 billion, which dwarfs a $1.7 billion. So somewhere down the line, these two agreements are going to be compared, and I'd be curious to see which side of history these fall on.
Mr. Heights.
Yeah, I would have to agree that I'm not opposed to the confrontation that's going on right now, and I think we needed to take on Iran, and I don't believe that the original agreement was being honored. You can say whatever you want. I just don't trust the Iranians. I don't think they ever are honest. The problem with Trump right now is he thinks he's negotiating with somebody who negotiates in good faith, and the Iranians just never have. And he keeps saying we have a deal, and then the Iranians coming out an hour later saying, well, yeah, we don't have any deal. We haven't agreed to anything. He just needs to say, we'll have a deal when we have a deal, and the war will be over when the war is over, when we have accomplished everything we want to accomplish. Quit coming out and saying we have a deal, and then 2 days later we don't have a deal. And if you're going to do this, then do it. Quit on again, off again, because that is how the Iran regime has played this for years, is delay, 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 delay. So if you're going to strike militarily, then strike militarily. This on again, off again is not working. I think you're right that I think Trump at this point is more worried about how this looks and the economy and the price of gas and how this is all going to affect him and his legacy at this point. And I just think he's dealing with it the wrong way at this point.
Mr. Dillon Bishop.
Well, I think there's been speculation that there's some market manipulation at play with when we say a deal is close, when we say that there's no deal. I think that's something that's easy to find plausible but hard to prove. The chief foreign affairs correspondent for Wall Street Journal posted today that Iran's mayor, I assume I'm maybe pronouncing that correctly, news agency published a purported text of the draft agreement with Trump. It would keep the Strait of Hormuz under Iranian control, will promise Iran $300 billion in reconstruction money, in addition to an immediate cash transfer of $24 billion, a suspension of sanctions, and the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the Middle East. Also a commitment to not, I think this is just playing with the words here, not the exact text, is a suspension of a commitment to not bother Iran again about its missiles and proxies, and restraining Israel and Lebanon. The U.S. gets, in exchange, a pinky promise to respect the nuclear proliferation treaty. If that's true, or if part of it is true, I think it's going to be hard to spin this as anything but a loss for the United States. I think Trump will try to do it regardless of what the deal is. But part of this is going to be what will Netanyahu and Israel let Trump do, because it's been a pretty hard line of the Iranians that they're not in. A red line is the attacks in Lebanon. So I'm interested to see where it goes, but I think that no matter what, it's probably going to be hard to spin as anything but a defeat.
Back to you, John Doyle.
The first war in which the United States engaged after we got our independence from Britain was the war against the Barbary pirates. The crowned heads of Europe had agreed to pay tribute to the Bey of Tunis, who was organizing the whole thing, and essentially he had closed the Strait of Gibraltar to commerce, and anything in the Mediterranean had to pay him tribute. And the United States of America said, we are not going to stand for that. We sent a small flotilla of ships under the command of Stephen Decatur, defeated the Barbary pirates, and opened the Strait of Gibraltar to commerce. It is our tradition that the seas are free to commerce. And if President Trump agrees to any deal that lets Iran essentially control the Strait of Hormuz, it will be a gross violation of all the naval tradition of our country. So he can't do that.
That defeat of the Barbary pirates also started the tradition of the pirates losing, by the way, which continues this day. Unabated by the ownership of Robert Nutting. Please sell the team back.
The Bay of Pittsburgh.
That's where it all began, John. The Barbary pirates.
Dylan, I'll say, if that's the deal that you just read, that is
deal.
a horrible deal.
That's much worse than the Obama agreement.
Yes, that is a complete failure.
Yeah, I think they really underestimated what Iran could handle as part of this.
There's no way, absolutely no way, they can possibly match the Obama deal. I don't care how they spend it. There's no way they can match that.
Well, sure they can.
On
match
paper,
it?
the Obama deal, not the
yes.
enforced Obama.
Yes, you can match that. You can completely defeat this regime, and take away all of their uranium. That's how you have a better deal.
That has all sorts of ramifications. That's what Trump is trying to avoid right now, trying to avoid boots on the ground.
Right,
You
he's
cannot
trying to do
that.
right. He's trying to do
ground.
both things at one time.
And he's not doing
can't.
either one.
Right,
Not doing
exactly.
I think in order to do that, Mike Haidt, we would have to have a minimum of 300,000 troops on the ground in Iran. And this would cause us to have to go back to the draft. I guarantee you the American people will not accept that.
On to issue number 5, and with that, it is Michael Carl.
Okay. The Democrats calling to abolish, not reform, but abolish ICE, I say, shows that they do not support border security for the United States.
All right, now, ICE breaks down on party lines and also on demographics of age as well. So let's start with Dylan Bishop on this one. I want to get the younger citizen point of view on ICE and its funding.
Well, I think when a lot of people that might say abolish ICE look at it, what they're kind of going about is, I think it is a separate issue when it comes to what's happening at the border versus what's happening in the country. And I think ICE is mainly going with enforcement inside the country. But I think what the problem is that a lot of people, and I think Joe Ferretti kind of brought this up last week, is the structure of ICE misusing its power and doing things that it shouldn't do, acting outside of the law, which would be deporting people that should not be, acting violently in ways they should not. That's even separate from the incidents in Minneapolis where standbyers, protesters were killed. That's takes it even to another level, and I think that's probably the main thing. And obviously calls to abolish ICE came before those issues too. But I think a lot of people who are in favor of that see ICE as more of an arm to for the Trump administration to get out the people that they don't want here. And I think that regardless of what your opinion on that may be, I think that there are definitely issues where ICE has overstepped its boundaries, has, like I said, probably acted too recklessly, and has deported people that should not be or have taken violent actions against people. So I think it's partially a pushback on, we think the Trump administration just doesn't want immigrants here, legal or illegal. The process, and I'm not saying that that's my full-on opinion. I see where it's coming from, but I think that, legal immigration has become a lot harder and has been hard. So I think there's an aspect of it that comes from trying to be empathetic towards why a person might come here illegally and say, well, if they didn't commit a crime other than crossing the border, is it that big of a deal? But I think you can obviously poke holes in that. But I think, generally speaking, it's an overreach of a part of the federal government that a lot of people are seeing very publicly, and in general are just not fans of because they think there are ill intentions behind it.
Mr. Doyle.
I find it interesting that Mike Carl and some of my other Republican friends like to look at comments made by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and some of the others on the far left who do want to abolish ICE and say, aha, that's the Democrats. No, it's not the Democrats. It's some of the Democrats. I do not think ICE should be abolished. I think it needs to be seriously restructured. And Dylan's right. Even under the current structure, it's being used improperly domestically. The American people have always said we do not want a national police force. That protecting the health and safety of the public within the boundaries of the country should be up to the states and local governments. That the national government is to defend us from foes from outside. These things can cross periodically. You have things like intelligence that maybe get into if somebody snuck into the country and wanted to set a bomb, some agent of the IRGC, sure. But that is all that ICE is supposed to do. Other than that, it should be local law enforcement, and I do think a new presidential administration in 2028 can fix that part of it. It probably does need some statutory restructuring, and we can all talk about what that might be. But no, I do not think that all Democrats, or even most Democrats, are in favor of abolishing ICE. They think they should be, as Dylan said, they should be restricted to the border, not internal, not regulating American citizens and visitors internally.
Mr. Haidt.
Well, I think John's wrong. I think the majority of Democrats do want to abolish ICE, and let's remember, ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're enforcing current laws in the United States. That's their purpose, is to enforce those laws. And why have the laws if you're not going to enforce them? Now, what they're doing is they're going out and they're identifying people who have broken immigration and customs laws and rounding them up and deporting them, or doing what now. Are the tactics always the way they should be? Maybe not. And maybe we should be looking at reforming the tactics and the way they do it. However, there should be nothing wrong. Nobody should have a problem with immigration enforcement and rounding up people who are here illegally. And I don't care if it is somebody that came on an education visa and has overstayed that visa, or whether they came across the border illegally. I don't care what the reason is. We have immigration laws, and they need to be enforced. Every other country in the world has immigration laws. If we were to go to another country and try to stay there indefinitely, we would be deported back here. They just, other countries don't allow it, and I don't know why we think we should as well, or shouldn't.
Bill Stubblefield, 2 minutes.
I believe there's two issues here, as Dylan mentioned. We have the border and we have the tactics used by ICE. I do not disagree that there is a role for ICE. I do disagree the tactics which ICE has used in places. Admittedly, they backed off some after Minneapolis with the pushback of the public, and the president heard this pushback, but the tactics that was being used in Minneapolis and early in the ICE in this administration, I think, was a clear affront to the principles and the character of the American people. It ran against our history. It ran against what we consider to be decency toward our fellow man. You can paint it and spin it any way you want to, but there was still an affront, and it was felt by the people, and that was made clear to the president. As a consequence, the tactics of ICE has changed radically in the last month and a half, 2 months.
Mr. Carl, back to you.
I'm pleased to hear all of the commentators essentially agree that the word should be reform ICE, not abolish ICE.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know when we became an all-or-nothing culture, but that's where we are now. It's like if you're a Republican and you have voted with Trump 99% of the time, and one time you vote against him, next thing you know, you're being primaried, and he's campaigning to have you ousted. It's like criticism of Israel. If you may have criticized Israel's techniques against or tactics against Palestine, and immediately you got accused of being an anti-Semite, right? And it's the same with ICE. So you're not thrilled with all of ICE's tactics, and the next thing you know, you're labeled as someone who wants to let 1 million people come across the border every hour of the day. And that's not the case. There's layers to everything, and I don't know why we suddenly decided we wanted to become an all-or-nothing culture, but it is where we are now. And if you agree with 100% of what somebody tells you, I feel sorry for you. Because you should never agree with 100%. There shouldn't be anybody else out there who thinks exactly like you on every single thing. There shouldn't be. And if there is, then I think Elon Musk has started developing clones and didn't tell us.
Hey, Rob?
Yeah, John.
Mark Twain's famous line, if there's another person on this planet that agrees with me about everything, one of us is unnecessary.
As usual, Mark Twain had it down. Yeah. Hey, we got final thoughts coming up. Mr. Doyle, we will begin with you on the phone and then work our way around the room. 8 seconds apiece, and we're trying to guarantee Mike Hyde his time this week, too. So let's be efficient, people.
Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Dylan Bishop.
C. Montgomery Burns once said, family, religion, friendship. These are the 3 demons you must slay to succeed in business.
The Simpsons. Mr. Stubblefield.
I enjoyed Dylan's contribution today. Very good, Dylan.
Mr. Carl.
Go Mountaineers in baseball.
Mike Height, you've got 15 seconds.
Wow, amen to that, Mike. And I'll just say Sunday is Flag Day. Show your appreciation to the United States and display your flag. Get out there and have a good picnic this weekend.
Thank you, folks. Dave Ramsey's show is coming up next. Have a great weekend. This is Talk Radio, WNR Martinsburg and TV 10. And we'll talk to you again in 70 short hours.